Welcome, everyone, to another Jags podcast, episode 20. It's a big one, guys. Episode 20. And for episode 20, we have everyone here with us for the first time in probably a month, I would say, at least about 4 episodes. Yeah. Jason and I have been the mainstays, and Joey, you've been out of town, work and family vacations, but you're back. Oh, well, you were back last week, though, too. I've already forgotten.
But everybody's here. It's awesome.
Everyone's here. Robert, you're here.
I'm here.
Yeah, Jason, of course.
Always here.
He and I never leave. We're always here. I don't know if that speaks to our dedication or just that we're losers.
I'd say dedication for sure.
Yeah, me too.
I didn't even think loser.
No, I'm a winner. Tonight we're going to be talking. We've spent lion's share of the offseason talking about all the players on the team, the position groups. If you haven't heard any of those, you can go back. I think about 7 episodes worth where we talk about every single position group on the offensive and defensive side of the ball. Last week we finished it up with quarterback. We talked a lot about Blake Bortles, obviously. Tonight we're going to shift gears a little bit, and we're going to talk about the front office, specifically General Manager Dave Caldwell, which is a polarizing topic, to say the least. We're going to be discussing amongst ourselves and also reading some of your feedback that you gave us via Twitter and other means, our thoughts on Caldwell and if he's done a good job as our general manager since he's been hired way back in 2013. Before we get to that, we do want to remind everyone that we are on Twitter at Another Jags Pod, and you can find us on Facebook and Instagram at Another Jags Podcast. New is you can find us on YouTube. If you're not savvy or understand anything about the podcast world, you can just go to YouTube, type in Another Jags Podcast, and listen to our episodes there. It's not video, but it is audio for you to listen to and enjoy, and you can even add comments. We are here for you. That is what makes us the #1 off-season podcast. It can be disputed, but it is the absolute truth. So argue if you want, but that's the way it goes.
No point in arguing.
No, there's no point in arguing.
Disputed how? Numbers don't lie.
That's right. And we are here for you week in and week out. So let's dive right into it real quick. Dave Caldwell, I'm going to ask you guys real bluntly. What do you think? Yes or no? Good GM. Joey, I'm going to start with you.
I would say yes.
Yes, a good GM.
Yes.
Okay. Robert?
I'm going to have to say yes.
All right. We got 2 yeses. Jason?
Yeah, I'm a fan.
Okay.
I'm going to pull a Jason real quick and jump back on the fence and kind of preface that with, yes, good GM, but it's easy to say that when you're coming off the season we just had.
Oh, yeah.
That's true.
Absolutely.
I necessarily wasn't sold on him until this last season, and I felt like with the number of Pro Bowlers and everything we had, it made me more confident in his abilities.
This season did a lot for him. His record was not good before this season.
No, not at all.
He was looking at 15-49. That's not good.
That's not good.
It's terrible.
But then last year, if you add the playoff games, the 2017 season with the playoffs, he was 12-7. So that brings his total record up with the Jaguars to 27-56.
That's still not good.
That's what I'm saying.
No.
Let me ask you this. Let's look at last year. Let's say, again, we play hypotheticals a lot on this show, mainly because it's the off season, so that's what there is mostly to talk about. Let's say they go 10-6 is what they were in the regular season last year. It wasn't like they were 13-3 or 14-2. 10-6. They barely won their first playoff game. It was not a pretty game, but a win in the playoffs is a win, and we'll take it however it looks. But let's say they lost that game against Buffalo. What do you say about him then? Do you still think he's a good GM with all these players that have gone to the Pro Bowl, and they only make it to they did win their division, but they lose in the first round of the playoff. You don't have that magical game in Pittsburgh. You don't have the what-ifs in New England. What do you say about him then? In a game that they won 10-3, let's say they lose 12-10.
Going from the season before to that, I would still say yes, good job. That was a fantastic leap.
Okay.
I said I think he's a good general manager, but then you start thinking in your head, not right now, but at that point in time, you start going, well, how much of that was Tom Coughlin coming in and helping pick out these people that they wanted to bring in as well, and how much of it was it all Dave Caldwell doing his thing? That'd be a weird situation to be in, and I just don't think he would be there if we didn't get through Buffalo. I think he would have been gone.
To his defense, he inherited such a terrible team.
He did.
And so the roster he had, it would have been impossible for him to win the first 2 years.
But he also stuck with a terrible head coach.
He hired a terrible head coach.
And then stuck with him.
Yeah.
That was, and I guess we'll just go ahead and jump right in, because I'm going to say yes, he's a good GM, but if you really look at what he's done, there are some seriously questionable moves that he's made that you think, oh man, if we had just done this instead of this, where would we be now? It really took kind of looking back over his history it's pretty eye-opening. But the first decision he made was, was he here when Malarkey was here as the coach?
He fired Malarkey.
He fired Malarkey, and he brought in Gus Bradley. Yeah. To Robert's point, I think it was something we were going to bring up. He hired Gus Bradley.
To be fair on the Malarkey thing, that more than likely was going to happen no matter what. That was almost one of those bringing a head coach just to chop heads and then get rid of him. But he did bring in Gus Bradley afterwards.
No one's looking at Caldwell and even remembering anything about Malarkey. It was all about Bradley.
You had to get someone in at that point in time.
I mean, also at that point, though, Bradley was the hot
I was going to say.
He was the guy.
Everyone saw that as like a home run hire when it was made.
Absolutely.
Because he was hot coming off of that Seahawks team.
Plus, if you've met Bradley, how can you not like the guy? He's going to interview well. He's coming off a fantastic resume as defensive coordinator. I can't say his hire was bad at all.
But what was bad about it? Kept him too long, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
We don't get to see what goes on behind the scenes, but by the time Gus Bradley was out the door, not a single one of those guys that talked him up as being this great guy and everything were really crying over him leaving. At the same time, that tells you a lot right there.
People were just tired of losing.
They were tired of losing, but you can't also have a happy-go-lucky guy nonstop in your locker room when you're getting beat down.
Yeah, his philosophy doesn't work if your team is bad.
His philosophy works as a coordinator because you need the head coach to come in, chew you out, and then your coordinator to come back, build you back up, and get you back out there doing something.
Well, he just follows the Pete Carroll's system. So he literally just does exactly what Pete Carroll does.
Yeah, but he doesn't seem like he's a nice guy.
No,
Pete Carroll, that's like sneak
coach.
the peek. Sneak the peek.
They all steal from each other.
That's
all
true.
The coaches, they just do exactly what their predecessor did. And Pete Carroll's system works, but a lot of times it doesn't. So that player's coach mold of, let's improve every day. That's not Gus Bradley's thing. That's Pete Carroll's thing. And let's not focus on wins and losses. Let's focus on improvement. That kind of thing. Let's be competitive every day. All that stuff's from Pete Carroll, and ultimately is from Bill Walsh. So it just kind of went down that tree. But it works sometimes, and it doesn't work other times. When your team is bad, that system looks bad, like it did with Bradley.
The thing about Gus is holding on to him too long. Nobody ever has said that guy's not a nice guy. I was talking to a guy at work today. A friend of his bought 2 jet skis off Craigslist, and it was from Gus Bradley. Went over to pick him up and buy them. Gus invited him into his house, talked to him for like an hour. Football, life, everything. Great guy. It's harder to fire somebody like that. The players liked him. Everybody liked him. Mm-hmm. It just wasn't working, and he should let him go sooner.
The players wanted to win for him. They made that
they did.
Evident. It's hard not to like the guy.
I wanted him to do good. By the 3rd season, I was very skeptical, but at the same time, I was like, let's give him another shot because he seems like a really good guy.
If Coughlin had been here in the role that he's with the team right now, would he have fired Bradley?
He would have never hired Bradley to begin with because he would not have gone with the philosophy of being the nice guy in the locker room. That is not Tom Coughlin.
He wouldn't have hired him. If Coughlin was here when Gus Bradley was here, I think he would have fired him immediately.
Again, none of us are in the Jaguars' offices. My high-level view on
Not
yet. One day.
We're working our way up.
But
download by download.
My high-level view on it from what I can see is that Coughlin's benefit to everybody was he put a system in place, a system of discipline all across the board, not just with the players, but with everybody. Caldwell can only do so much. He can only recruit players.
He's the general manager.
He's the general manager, but he's not the day-to-day guy. So if your day-to-day guy and your overall boss man is not the guy setting the standard like that, I think that's what Coughlin did. I still think Caldwell's making all the calls as far as the players go. I think Caldwell just set the discipline, and that helps Caldwell.
Yeah, I think
if that's all Coughlin's doing, why couldn't?
It's a respect thing, man. No, just not a normal guy.
Then what does that say about Caldwell?
If
he can't bring discipline or respect to his position as a general manager, doesn't that speak?
Well, he's young. He's only 43.
Yeah, I was gonna say. I think
know.
he needs someone above him currently to kind of build him up into that next position, and I think Coughlin is just letting him kind of run his deal and signing off on approval. But if there's something going on he doesn't like, he's like, no.
I disagree. I think Coughlin's doing a lot more than you think.
Oh, I have no doubt that he's doing a ton.
He better be. If he's only there to instill discipline,
no.
Then they need to fire Caldwell.
I don't think Coughlin's not doing anything. I'm saying I think he's allowing Caldwell to have the reins on certain things because he obviously believes in him to some degree. Otherwise, he would have been out the door along with everyone else.
Absolutely.
Let me say this. If you are the general manager of an NFL team and you don't demand discipline from your subordinates, then there's something wrong with you. You shouldn't have to have someone come in, whether it's Tom Coughlin or anyone else, to say, hey, you need to respect this guy. That's like saying your dad has to come to work with you so that people don't steal your lunch money. I mean, that's ridiculous. He's the general manager.
He is, but
well, he is the GM, but I don't know if he's serving in the capacity that other GMs do. Like
Not anymore.
Not anymore.
Not anymore.
That's what I'm saying. Because honestly, you can't fire a coach and keep the entire staff unless that's coming from someone else.
Yeah.
Dave Caldwell would not have been able to fire just Gus Bradley and promote everyone else. That would not fly. He would have been fired. That decision came from a big dog upstairs, Coughlin.
I do
and he
agree
came
with that.
because Hackett wouldn't have been able to do that. You have to clean house if that happens.
Yeah.
And like that was a boss move. And
I do agree with that.
That's what made me think that Coughlin's like, all right, this, and he's
the czar.
There's so much much of what a GM does, because I was looking through like what all of the transactions he made are like cutting and releasing the players over and over again, and there's so much of that going on in a GM's job. Caldwell may be doing that stuff, like the guys that go from practice squad to roster to injury to physically unable to play to suspended to practice squad. I'm sure Caldwell's doing all that, but when it comes to the big dog moves, I think Coughlin's pretty much making all of them. I think that's why he was brought in.
The offseason moves for the past 2 years were Coughlin, not Caldwell.
Yes.
You don't think
Ever
that,
since Coughlin got here, I think he's been
free
making
agency. He's making all the
Yes.
decisions.
but do you
Yes.
think Caldwell is bringing all those to the front and then Coughlin signing off, or do you think Coughlin himself is doing most of that legwork?
I think they do it. They probably do it as like a team effort.
well, that's exactly that's what I'm
uh,
thinking.
They brought in John Idzik Jr., who is the Jets GM. He's a contract consultant. Like that, they got this team in there working. I mean, this guy was with the Jets. His biggest mistake was he drafted D. Milliner and the 9th overall pick, DB out of Alabama. I mean, it's not really that risky of a move, but he ended up being terrible. And then Geno Smith in the second round was a bad pick. But he's shown more value as someone who to draw up contracts, which is what he's doing for the Jags. So I think it's just a team effort. But I think ultimately Coughlin's sitting at the head of the table and basically saying, give me your ideas. And then he says, all right, this, and this.
Well, it's funny that you bring that guy up because we on this show and a lot of people, when talking about Caldwell, what they give him credit for a lot of times is how he draws up contracts and how they're front loaded, and it allows a lot of cap space for the Jaguars, and everyone has committed him. Before that, Joey and myself have done it on this show. So now what you're saying, Jason, is there's actually another guy that's doing a lot of that as well.
Yeah.
When did he get brought in?
He was brought in 2015. So he was fired by the Jets in 2014. And then he got hired immediately by Caldwell.
It shows Caldwell's obviously competent in the sense where he'll recognize this guy can sign contracts. Let's bring him in and we can work it.
This guy's been called like the contract magician, and like he's supposedly like the czar of contracts. But there was an article that he said he wants to be a GM again. So I don't know what that's going to happen with him, but Joey would like him because he's the one that drafted Tommy Bohannon. He's the reason why he's in Jacksonville.
Oh,
Touchdown Tommy, baby.
Yeah. He also drafted Calvin Pryor, who we brought in for a flyer and was terrible. But
So I mean, I guess maybe the overall question then would be, is Shad Khan the best owner in NFL history? Because he's set the tone for all this by bringing Coughlin in.
I think he's hired the best people.
And he's maximizing everybody's skill set. I mean, he's like, hey, you're good at this, you're good at this, you're good at this. You're not. We don't have this. We're bringing this guy in for the contracts and create this team just like you would in a business that is great. I mean, that's pretty awesome.
do you think Shad really is handling all that, or he got some guys to find the? I mean, I don't see him
I'd
as
be
really
ramping more than
I don't see
know.
Shad Khan before acquiring the Jaguars really truly being an NFL fan. It was more of he wants an NFL team to stamp to his name. So I feel like he has the guys around him to pull the certain pieces, but I mean, when it comes down to it, in my opinion, Coughlin wanted to come back to Jacksonville. Mm-hmm. I mean, he probably they reached out to him, but he was probably reaching out a little bit too, just to get back down here. I mean, his family's down here, but obviously it needed to work in his favor. I don't know. I like Shad Khan. I like a lot of the moves he's made, but I don't know how much credit I actually give to him for the overall organization is where it's at right this second.
I don't think Shad Khan knows if the Jags won a game or not until someone specifically tells him in his ear, whether he's at the stadium or not, including the playoff game. Oh, we won? All right.
He's just trying to make money. He's
exactly.
building out the stadium and everything and getting the money. Other than that, I don't think...
But hey, I'm fine with it as long as as long as he keeps the team here.
I have to believe with all the excellent decisions he's made and the money he's made that he's signing off on all those calls.
Right.
There's no way he's not. I mean, there's no way he's just handing that off and delegating that to somebody else on the major decisions. And he's kind of...
I mean,
I don't know.
It sounds like
I think the whole
guy, right?
entire franchise is for his son.
Yeah. But let me go back to Caldwell for a second, because we've said now, Joe, you said Shad Khan is brought in, or as Robert says, Shad Khan. Well, we'll go with Shad McCardell. But that he's kind of brought in all like a team. So in all that, how do you even judge Caldwell? Again, I want to go back to him and looking at him as a general manager, because I feel like in the larger markets, he would have been gone a long time ago. But in Jacksonville, we're a little more patient here. We've been extremely patient. They brought in Coughlin. They brought in the contract guy. They brought in an analytics guy. And I mean, how much help does a general manager, or should a general manager, need in order to be successful?
Well, I think if we want to judge him off of his ability to be a classical GM, you can look at what he did in the 3 years before Coughlin got here. In the classical sense you're talking about, we're making all the decisions and everything. I don't think that's what he is anymore. I think he's been demoted when Coughlin got here to a guy who gives input, does some scouting. I mean, he has a lot of experience scouting, and he's really young. He's only 43. I mean, that's pretty young for a GM. I could see Shad Khan hiring him because of he looked like the young, new, up-and-coming hire. I mean, look at the teams he worked for. 98 through 2006, he was with the Colts. He was an area scout for the first half, and ended up being like a higher-up scout. And under that experience, he saw the drafting of Peyton Manning, Edgerrin James, Reggie Wayne, Dwight Freeney, Dallas Clark, Bob Sanders, Marlon Jackson, Joseph Adai. That's a pretty impressive.
Nice haul.
That's a pretty impressive list right there.
Yeah.
And even if he was, I mean, I understand that it was Polian that was the GM, and he gets a lot of credit. He's on ESPN now for his wisdom and scouting, but he was a part of that. He was in those rooms. He saw that.
He got to work under those guys.
Right, exactly. Then he went with got a higher job, promotion to move to Atlanta, where he saw the drafting of Matt Ryan and Sean Witherspoon. And then he got promoted to director of pro personnel, saw Julio Jones, Desmond Trufant. I mean, these are guys that were good draft picks, all before the age of 40. He looked like the young up-and-coming hire. He looked like the hot commodity. He was doing a lot of good, but he did inherit an awful, awful team. And I think that hasn't been stressed enough. So I say it's fair to judge him on those 3 years, but remember the situation. We have to, when we go back and look at the decisions he made, we have to keep in mind the context that he had nothing. The cupboards were empty. Like, he had no skill on his team. So some of these signings and draft picks looked like reaches. He had to do something because they had nothing here. How bad the team was when he took over, there was no Pro Bowlers drafted from 2008 to 2013. The last one was 2007, Reggie Nelson.
Do you think because of that background, and then with Jacksonville working under Coughlin now, that at one point in time, if he does end up leaving Jacksonville, that he could be an insane GM, because now he understands, whether we call it the discipline or the back-end business things, now he's working under the next pretty much mastermind of that side of it, where he could really, truly run a GM? Or do you think he is going to always kind of be in this position where he's at now?
I think he's young, and if he's doing things the right way, he's going to learn and get better. I think Coughlin would be a great person to learn under, so I would expect him to be able to.
And Coughlin is not young.
Coughlin's not young. No, he's not. Yeah.
So who knows?
Maybe they could be prepping him just to take over this position.
I mean, I think he definitely has an eye for talent, but he didn't necessarily understand how all the pieces fit together before.
2013 was his first draft, right? Caldwell?
Yeah.
Okay. I mean, he took Luke Jokel second overall in the entire draft. I look, the first round of that draft in 2013 is pretty atrocious. There's not like, oh, how did he not take this guy? Really, if you're looking at it, Xavier Rhodes was picked 25th overall, and DeAndre Hopkins was picked 27th overall.
And Jokel was predicted to be a really good, supposed to be.
I don't know.
I mean, Tony Baselli was all over him, thinking he was going to be the next coming of himself.
I think they were selling it because there was nobody else. It was such a weak draft. But those are really the only two guys, Xavier Rhodes and DeAndre Hopkins, in the first round that were worth anything. And so
it was a bad draft.
It was a very bad draft. But nobody from that team lasted long at all. I mean, it was just a terrible draft overall, and I think that really set him back. You know, not that first year coming in as a general manager, having a historically bad draft class, not just for the Jags, but for the NFL in general.
For an already bad team.
For an already bad team. So when you basically throw an entire year's worth of draft picks away, which is what this draft was, that's gonna put you behind the eight ball even more as you inherit this terrible team. But then, you go to 2014, which was a pretty notable draft for the Jags. They take Blake Bortles third overall. If you want to know our thoughts on Blake Bortles, go back to episode 19. We talked at great length about him. But then if you look in that first round, at number 5, you got Khalil Mack. 13, you have Aaron Donald. 15, you had Ryan Shazier, who before his terrible injury was one of the best linebackers in the league. So, and I'm just playing devil's advocate here to really look. Teddy Bridgewater was picked the last in that round. There was some other players in that first round, but really, was that the right pick then? And we're still wondering. Going into his 5th year, was that the right pick? While you had Khalil Mack sitting there, who is arguably one of the best, defensive players in the league.
Or Aaron Donald, who's arguably one of the best defensive players in the league. Yeah.
Exactly. So, I mean, there's guys that are sitting there in that one that, you scratch your head a little bit and go, I wonder. But I'm gonna fast forward. But
he cleaned up in that draft, though.
He did. It was a good draft. He had
Yeah.
Linder in the 3rd round.
Yeah.
I think was
Colvin, Allen Robinson, Telvin Smith.
Okay, I'm glad you brought that up because do you know who was picked immediately after Allen Robinson in that draft? Remember, Allen Robinson is not on the team anymore.
Yeah.
Allen Robinson was taken 61st overall.
What team was it?
I'm not going to say.
But is it a receiver?
No.
Okay.
The person taken immediately after Allen Robinson, again, who is no longer on the team, was Jimmy G.
Jimmy G.
Oh, man.
I saw that, and I almost there was a little tear almost formed, in my eye because
they traded up for him.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the Jags could have had Marquise Lee at 39, who they still have on their team, and then had Jimmy Garoppolo,
who would have been
at
learning
61,
behind who?
And then they could have drafted Khalil Mack.
Oh my God!
3rd overall.
You could do this all day, though.
You could, but that's what we're doing.
Yeah.
That's why this.
But
is
we
fun.
would have never got Jalen Ramsey if we got those other people.
That's the thing. You never know. But who knows who we? Who
and they
else
got
we could have
Telvin.
gotten.
Would you trade?
No.
All those players for
Answer's
Telvin?
no.
No, I couldn't. And Jalen, can you throw Jalen in?
No. We talked about Jimmy G, Allen Robinson.
But Telvin wasn't until the 5th round.
I know, but we still got Telvin.
Yeah, we did get
So would you
Telvin.
trade anyone? Would you trade Telvin for these guys?
That whole thing right there, that question, is the tug of war with Dave Caldwell.
Yeah.
To me, is his first round picks versus his 3rd through 5th round. I mean, the 5th round picks that he's made have been like that. Telvin was a huge.
I mean, he's a top player in the NFL.
Huge pick. Yes, he is, and I applaud Caldwell for getting him. But again, playing
Brandon Leonard is a
advocate-
top center.
He is. You're right.
That same draft.
You're right. Marquise Lee,
He's our top receiver.
he's our top receiver.
I'm
So
with you,
what would we be saying about Caldwell right now if that draft looked like Khalil Mack, Marquise Lee, Jimmy Garoppolo, Telvin Smith, Brandon Leonard in the 3rd round?
I'm not sold on Jimmy G yet, so.
And Aaron
Plus, he
Colvin
would have been
is
sitting behind who? Blaine Gabbert at the time?
Aaron Colvin?
Aaron Colvin was drafted there.
That's
in the
right.
Same draft.
That's right.
I mean, Jimmy G was sat behind Tom Brady,
That's true.
not Blaine Gabbert.
Not Chad Henne.
Yeah, Chad Henne. So, I mean, that could be a little bit of a product of that, too, so.
That's true too.
Yeah, but Tom Brady's notorious for saying that he doesn't help, the guys below him.
But you can watch him. If you're sitting on the field watching everything he does.
And you're still in one of the best systems ever.
Yeah.
Yeah, but
I'm still not sold
I
on
think
him.
that's giving Brady.
He needs
credit.
another year before I can say anything about Jimmy G.
I'm gonna say because they got Telvin, I think.
I agree.
I
You're
give him a
totally
pass.
right.
I give him a
Okay.
pass.
Listen,
I agree as well.
I love the Telvin pick.
Yeah.
And I'm not even saying what he did was wrong. I'm just saying think
It's
about
interesting.
it. It's interesting.
Yeah. Okay, let's stay.
Especially the fact that Garoppolo's picked right after.
Yeah.
If he was like 5 picks, that'd be one
Wasn't
thing.
Russell Wilson in that draft in the 3rd round? I think.
That was a year before, wasn't it?
But let's stay in 2014 and look at who he signed and cut. Okay.
Yeah.
So it was the same year that draft. In March he re-signed Chad Henne to a 2-year deal.
I don't hate that.
Signed Zane Beatles to a pretty big deal. But what's good about retrospect is you can look at how much the Jaguars actually paid them for their service. So the contract might have been huge, but he only got $12.5 million from the Jaguars. So
And Beatles also seemed like a pretty good pickup at that point.
there was some people that were saying he was the weak link of that Broncos offense, though.
Really?
Yeah, I know he had some height, but there's some people that weren't. But that's
But at
probably
the same
what
time,
turned
there
out
was
so
no
bad.
one we could get at that point in time
That's
for
true.
offensive linemen.
And
So
the
we
team
had to
was
get
so
someone
bad.
in.
And that's.
I mean-
remember, that's the thing with all of this. The team was so bad. Even these guys that we are like they were still were probably better than who they had on the team.
Yeah,
Right.
we
Yeah.
had a gamble on Zane Beatles at
Yeah.
that point because there was no one in free agency at that point as an offensive lineman that was even remotely thinking about coming to Jacksonville, no matter how much they were getting paid.
I was pumped about it when it happened.
Yeah.
no doubt.
And I'll let you finish going through that year, but afterwards, I'd like to make a point about that as well.
I can't
No,
wait.
you're not allowed. You missed too many episodes.
Definitely, I'm calling it.
All right, so
I got my hand up.
So Chris Clemens got $10 million from us, defensive end.
Yeah. Okay.
He was signed a big deal though, but it was structured and somehow Ziggy Hood ended up taking $4.4 million from us. Man, he was all right. But
Yeah.
that was the year that undrafted free agents, Alan Hearns, Tyler Shatley, and Josh Wells were all signed. That's three people. Yeah. And they're undrafted free agents.
Who we still have.
They were better than the free agents that we signed that year.
Yep.
That's crazy.
2 of the 3 are still on the team.
And he fired Jed Fish in 2014.
I like that move.
Can you give him credit for Hearns though? I mean, because that was probably
That
Jed
was more
Fish.
Jed Fish.
That was Jed Fish doing that.
Yeah, but he still has to.
He does, but
Sign
Jed
him.
Fish could come in and be like, "Hey,
Okay, that's a good point.
And again, I do think he's got a good eye for talent. And on that point, it really doesn't seem like the purse strings were opened up until the past couple of years either. So, I mean, behind the scenes, I don't think he had that checkbook to be like, I'm going to go get the best guy. But the past 2 years, it seems like he has. And
Well, they actually, from 2014 to 2016, they spent the most money of any team in the NFL.
on free agency?
Yeah.
Well, and
Really?
also not every free agent class is good.
That's true, too.
A lot of times you're just scraping the bottom of the
Like,
barrel.
you got to
know?
get somebody.
Yeah. So it's not. That's the problem with free agency. A lot of it is fool's gold. You're not going to see a Campbell, Boye, Church free agent class probably, I don't know, in the next 15 years, especially for the Jags. But, I mean, that is an all-time free agency signing class in the history of NFL.
Well, and he had Malik before that, and then he nailed the Lambeau firing Myers thing last
You're
year.
getting ahead
too.
of us there. You're getting ahead of us.
Sorry.
Okay, all right, let's go to
Let's bring it back. Let's bring it
2015.
back.
Joey
Let's bring it
wants
back.
to go speed up,
Yeah.
so we'll go to 2015.
it's got to
All
speed
right.
up still."
You're not getting slipped in Lambo there.
All right, do you want to start with the draft picks?
Sure. For what year?
2015.
Yeah, 2015. Go ahead.
First round pick, Dante Fowler, 3rd overall.
I still like it.
Well, I mean, actually,
he's not a starter.
I don't know if you guys remember this, but we actually watched that draft together.
Yeah, that Phillies.
I don't remember
Yeah.
that. Okay,
Uh,
nice. Yeah, I remember now.
I was kind of rooting for Amari Cooper, and I'm glad I wasn't the GM at that point because hasn't really turned out much. Other guys in that one, Vic Beasley. Here's an interesting one, which would change the whole dynamic of everything too. In the top 10 of that draft, number 10 overall, Todd Gurley.
Oof.
So do the Jags take him at 3? Which you think, running back, that's really high. Well, next year, Zeke Elliott, the year after that, or I don't know if my timing is exactly right. But, we've seen running backs go in the
That's
top
right.
5.
Yeah.
So, I was thinking about that. Like, ooh, what if the Jags had... And then I kept my habit. Okay, now you got Khalil Mack, got Jimmy G, and now you have Todd Gurley.
Well, at that point, there would be no reason to even have this discussion because he's the greatest GM of all time.
And we were like counting our Super Bowls.
I mean, I was with you on that. I thought Cooper, that same draft, I really wanted them to take him, and he had a great rookie year. He hasn't really done much since, but I mean, I can't knock the Fowler pick, man. I mean, that he got hurt. That kind of set us back again.
Yeah,
I mean,
which is not Caldwell's fault.
not
You
Caldwell's
can't
fault.
knock him for that.
And he's really, I mean, he's doing well.
Yeah, I don't have a problem with that. This year will tell a lot about that Fowler
That pick,
pick.
yeah.
That one's still up in the air too, just like Bortles.
Yeah.
It's kind of weird, 2 third overall picks are still up in the air for the Jags. That doesn't happen very often. By now, usually for a 3rd pick overall, you either know or you don't.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think, like you said, this is going to be the year for him. He may end up playing his way to that top pick status eventually because he looks like he may at this point.
Yeah. Is that Fowler?
Yeah.
You love Fowler.
I do love Fowler. But even if you're looking at like the way he's trending, like he very well, it wouldn't be surprising if he ended up playing like a top 5 player.
Yeah.
And then
Or like
based on
top 5 drafted player.
Yeah, what we said last week about Bortles is the same thing.
Yeah.
I mean, especially what Joey said.
So who do you
Locking it
think
in.
who do you think has a higher probability of playing their way to a top 3 pick, Bortles or Fowler?
Ooh, that's a great question.
Man, that was a fantastic question.
I'm gonna say Fowler, and this is why. I feel like Bortles can be serviceable, and I think he'll be good enough to be, maybe be our franchise quarterback. But I still stand by your quarterback doesn't have to be elite to win Super Bowls or to get in the playoffs consistently. Where Fowler, I think he has the talent to be a top 5 talent if he comes out next year and does the same, if not better, than he did last year with taking less than half of the snaps. So.
I'll say Bortles because of the opportunity. I mean, he's going to have the ball every single play on offense, where Fowler is playing behind Ngakoue, and who, unless he gets hurt, is not slowing down, in my opinion. He's getting better as well. So it's just going to be a matter of can Fowler get on the field. And if you can't get on the field, you can't prove your worth. And so I'm going to say, and I'm also going to hope that for the betterment of the team, that it is Bortles. We are a better team if the answer to that question is Bortles and not Fowler.
Thank you.
I was going to say Fowler until you said that.
I know.
But that was pretty
it was
good
really
point, James.
smart.
That was awesome.
Yeah.
But the reason I was going to say Fowler is I think he's more of a physically gifted individual. So I think his top end is higher just because of that. But he is going to be limited opportunity-wise. So, but I'll still go with Fowler just because he's just a freak of nature as far as the size, strength, speed, all that goes.
My thing with Fowler, 8 sacks as a backup. That's huge. And if he can do that again next
10
year.
if you count the postseason.
10 if you count the postseason. If he does that again next year, if we can't sign him, he's going to be insane somewhere else. He's going to be getting big money because that is a huge number.
That's what I was
as a backup.
I was going to say, you're right. This year, I think Bortles has a more opportunity, but over the course of their career, I think Fowler does. Only because think of what top 3 quarterbacks are. Like Peyton Manning, Matt Ryan, Jared Goff, Carson Wentz, Andrew Luck. I mean, top 3 quarterbacks are like supposed to be like cream of the crop.
Yeah.
And the top 3 defensive end is really good too.
Yeah.
But, Fowler is going to get the opportunity eventually. Maybe not from the Jaguars, but he'll get the opportunity eventually.
So based on that, did Caldwell blow the pick with Bortles at 3?
No, because I don't think Bortles has to be a top 3 or 5.
Jason just said he had a 3rd overall pick as a quarterback should be cream of the crop.
Well, I don't.
To be fair, I don't
which
know who
I
else-
agree.
Yeah.
But there's so many people that blow their top 10 quarterback pick. I mean, you never know.
I didn't ask is he a bad GM because I said did he
Right.
blow that pick?
No, I don't think he did because if he turns out to be a top 10 quarterback in the league, I'm fine with it. That's not a blown pick. You got a top 10 quarterback in the league.
Yeah, that and
Those are hard
I
to
mean,
come by.
you have to look at who our quarterbacks were at that time. We had Blaine Gabbert and Chad Henne before we brought in Bortles. We had an awful quarterback situation. I mean, a terrible one. So, I mean, you had to get someone at that time. Personally, I don't know if he is necessarily the right pick at that moment, but he is what they thought was going to be the best player in that draft at the quarterback position. And I think he's going to pan out to be that.
That pick came out of nowhere.
It did.
I mean, when they drafted Bortles, everyone was like, huh?
I was like, who?
Yeah. That was almost as worse as the Tyson Alualu pick.
No.
Where you're just like,
I love
that
him.
guy.
everyone
man.
was like, who?
He's a good
Alula
guy.
who?
Honolulu. What?
From Hawaii.
Who is this guy?
Oh, that one was rough. I mean, going
I
back
still
to
have a
what
jersey
Joey
by him.
said, that as long as he's a top 10 quarterback, which, I mean, listen, say we want about the national pundits, but they have him. Actually, I think it was ESPN either today or this week came out and said he's not even a top 32.
They've been
It's
saying this since the end of
ridiculous,
last
though.
season.
Which is ridiculous. It's
Yeah.
insane.
Yeah.
That's one of the dumbest, most irresponsible things ever. But, and I'm going to go back to this, Jimmy Garoppolo is projected to be by the end of the season a top 5.
That's ridiculous.
Pick.
It's absurd. I mean, I'll say this. I think I've said it in an earlier episode. Teams didn't have enough time to scheme against Jimmy Garoppolo. He came out there and they were able to just catch everyone off guard. I think he's going to be solid. I don't think he's going to be near as good as anyone thinks he's going to be.
Dude.
Teams are going to have a chance to scheme against him, and I think he's going to get blown
I
out.
I like him.
I see your point,
At all.
man, but he throws a perfect ball. He's got a quick release. He's done nothing but win every game he started. I kind of would put a flyer on him and say, he's going to be great.
If you could trade Bortles for Jimmy G right now,
I would in a
Yes.
second.
Okay.
I'm one of the biggest Bortles fans
Yeah.
in the city.
I'm with you all that.
Yeah.
All right, let's look at who else was
That was
drafted for the Jags.
Yeah, go ahead.
That
we,
year.
we could stay on this topic.
Right, yeah. Screw Jimmy Garoppolo. He's on our team.
Jimmy G,
Yeah.
hate him.
All right, so the rest of that draft that year was T.J. Yeldon, A.J. Cann, James Sample, Rashad Green, Michael Bennett, Neil Sterling, and Ben Koyak. So Yeldon, Cann, Rashad Green, maybe, and Koyak are still on the team.
Sample was a bust because of injuries.
Yeah.
I mean, did he even play a game?
No, I don't think so.
Yeah.
Cairns at best serviceable. Yeldon is kind of in the same boat for me.
I don't know. Yeldon, I mean, he's still on the team. He's going to add
He
a lot
is.
of value. It was a second-round pick, so you might want more. But I wouldn't classify that as a bad pick now. But we did go and sign Chris Ivory and draft Leonard Fournette after drafting Yeldon in the second round.
Right.
If he was drafted in the 4th round, I would have said great pick. But second round...
And that was kind of a reach, too. He wasn't really projected to go that high. He was more of a later second-round pick guy.
not
even
a number
third round.
one. Not a number one running back.
Yeah, Yeldon's definitely one of his picks that just doesn't sit well with me.
He looked good at Alabama. but everyone kind of knew he wasn't going to
doesn't,
translate.
though?
I
The
know.
offensive
I would
line,
never.
I mean-
I wouldn't. Besides offensive line, I wouldn't draft anybody from Alabama
No.
on the offensive side.
No,
on the
defense.
offensive
What
side.
about Derrick Henry or
Yeah.
like
No, I
think the book is still wide open on Henry. And I
what
like him a
about
lot, but-
Calvin Ridley? I mean, these guys are probably going to be good. Mark Cooper wasn't, but
What
who
about
was
DJ Hayden? I mean, come on.
that's I'm saying on offense. The offensive
not DJ
side.
Hayden?
not DJ. Oh man,
Ronnie Harrison.
Ronnie Harrison.
Yeah, Ronnie Harrison. That's the answer.
It's amazing Jason knew what you were talking about.
Yeah.
It wasn't even close.
Yeah, I
That's
knew
impressive.
he
That was my fault.
was going with that. I knew he was going with that.
Although I will say this, looking at the second round, just the second round of that draft, we got T.J. Yeldon. There's no one that was drafted in the second round by all the other teams, and I'm going, oh, man, if we had only gotten him instead. Ronald Darby, actually. That would have been a good pick. That's it. So, yeah.
Not bad. I mean, Rashad Green, he could end up being good.
Could be. Well, another one where we're kind of waiting to see. Right now, it's a bust, but that's a fifth-round pick, right?
Yeah.
So
No, I'm saying he could be good,
those
is
are
what I'm saying.
gambles.
Yeah. Okay, so let's see what he did in free agency 2015. January, he had fired Jed Fish and hired Greg Olson.
I mean, that's the same exact thing to me. I mean, Jed Fish was
Greg Olson has clout though. Like he was like that was like a total change of direction. That was like someone who was a high school coach 8 years ago to someone who is like a quarterback whisperer.
Yeah, they say that,
Quotes.
but they if you go back and look at all the quarterbacks he worked with, they
he
didn't
gets a lot
pan
of-
out
He gets a
until
lot of credit for Derek Carr.
But again, I mean, I don't
Wow.
think you can
One
knock
guy.
a GM's decision on hiring a guy based on how the guy actually does. I mean, if everybody agrees that was the top pick for that time for that position or that coaching spot, I mean, he made the right call.
I don't know how
You
that
can't
was,
guarantee
though.
they're going to turn out okay.
Yeah.
I don't know how that was though, because I mean, to me the writing was on the wall. He went somewhere different every year. Every year, you don't just get passed along in the league when you're supposed to be this great guy. They're going to keep you on the staff. I mean, and Greg Olson got passed along all over the place. To me,
a lot of
he
coaches do that, though.
They do, but I mean, as an offensive coordinator,
He was he was bouncing from like quarterback coach to OC and then back
I mean,
and forth.
that's got to show you something.
Regardless if I about that, we'll move on. March, they signed Jeremy Parnell, $21 million. He's made from the Jags.
Still on the team.
Still on the team. I'm not
Starting.
a fan, but
I think he's more than serviceable.
No, I don't know. I'm okay with that
he
one.
grades out well and the fans love him.
Yeah, man,
so,
I'm
good for
fine
him.
with that one. I think, no character issues. I think I'm fine with it.
All right, so I guess this may be partly of why I don't like Jeremy Parnell as much as a lot of people do, is because this bundle of free agents in 2015 really rubbed me the wrong way. Because the second it happened, I instantly said none of those guys are going to be good. It was the quad of Jeremy Parnell, Devon House, Dan Scuda, and Sergio Brown. The second the four of those guys were signed, it didn't even take me a second. I said none of those guys are going to pan out. Parnell's kind of proved me wrong, but I still don't think he's that good.
Yeah, Scooter was a disaster.
That was a
and House was
terrible
very
free
flashy.
agent class.
There was every single one was a reach, especially House and Sergio Brown. I mean, is Sergio Brown even in the league anymore?
No.
And Devon House got paid a truckload of money.
Yeah,
He got $12.5 million for 1 year with us.
Is Scuda still in the league right
No.
now? I don't think. Yeah.
No.
Oh, don't get me started.
So,
on Scuda.
not a good 2015 in my book for Caldwell. A meh 14 and a not good 15. The best thing he did in 15 was he traded Scobie for a 6th-round pick. You remember, to the Steelers?
Yes.
Do you know who that 6th-round pick became?
I don't know.
I don't, but I'm excited.
Yeah.
Brandon Allen.
So they basically just let the Steelers take on Scobie's contract.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, they got a practice arm, I guess. They got a practice arm out of it. All right, so 15. There it is, folks. 15.
Yeah. Okay. Let's move on.
Move on to 16.
Yeah.
This is where the drafting gets.
This
This is where it gets
interesting.
spicy.
It gets fun.
Well, okay, and there's obviously it's an insanely good draft class. At number 5, Jalen Ramsey, just maybe the most excited I've ever been in a draft. Then we go 2nd round, Miles Jack. He somehow drops, and then we get Unique Ngakoue in the 3rd round. Now, let me say, is the Jalen? How much credit do you give Caldwell for drafting Jalen Ramsey?
That's an obvious pick.
Exactly, that's kind of my point. Like, you would have drafted Jalen
Yes,
Ramsey then, right?
absolutely.
We all would have drafted Jalen Ramsey. So I don't know how much you can say. Wow,
And Miles Jack falling like he did, that was kind of
a no-brainer
gift-
too,
gift
right?
As well.
Yeah. So even though this is an amazing class, it's like how much I mean, how much credit do you give him?
The Ngakoue was almost like Telvin Smith, man. I mean,
that's where it starts.
Yeah, that's where it's.
Yeah,
you got to add that in.
That's the one to me. That's the one that you really look at this draft class and point to that pick, because the Ramsey one and the Myles Jack one, as great as players as they're going to be, as they are now and will be, we were making that pick watching the draft. So, but the Ngakoue one, I didn't know who he was, and I mean, he's
couldn't even say his name at that point.
Yeah. Again, another, I don't know if you consider a third round a late round, but another not first or second round pick where Caldwell has really, earned his keep with the Jags. Huge pick.
Absolutely.
Huge.
Yeah. I mean, that's kind of probably what redeemed him from that terrible 2015 was that whole draft class.
Right.
I mean, if it wasn't for that draft class, he may not be the GM still. I mean, if he had a couple clunkers in that class the way he did in 15 and 14 and 13, then he might be out of a job, but that might have saved his entire job. That class. That was a good class there. I went back and watched some Yannick Ngakoue when we drafted him, and he didn't look like he was the one that was causing the sacks. It looked like he was just kind of cleaning them all up. So I was like, man, that's not going to translate to the NFL. Man, boy, was I wrong. I was wrong.
Where do you play?
Maryland.
Maryland.
Yeah. And he didn't really, like I said, he didn't do the things he does now in college. I don't know where that came from. He was just a guy who was just faster than everyone else. So he would just like circle the pocket and then would get an effort sack. And he really didn't even have that many. So, but like I said, good job, Caldwell. I was wrong.
After the third round, Sheldon Day was in the fourth. Is he still on the team?
No.
And so, I mean, no one else is on the team anymore from that draft class.
I don't think Sheldon Day was a bad pickup.
No, he kind of got lost in the shuffle.
I think he could have done well.
People weren't, I don't know. He wasn't that.
Is he in the
wasn't
league?
that highly sought after.
No.
He was good at Notre Dame, but like everyone was kind of like, he's not going to.
Well, his size. It was.
He just seemed to have some plays where you're like, man, that guy's a beast.
Yeah. I think there was some plays he was unblockable at Notre Dame because he was so big. And then he got to the NFL, and it was like they didn't have a problem blocking him. And then he couldn't really do anything. He was so slow, and his feet were.
Gotcha.
So really, I mean, those first three picks were all home runs, but then no one else panned out for that. So it's, I don't know, it's an interesting draft class in terms of grading Caldwell from it. He really hit a home run on one pick. The other ones were no-brainers that everyone in the room, almost every Jag fan would have.
Well, he had to take a chance. A lot of teams didn't take a chance on Myles Jack, though, because he had injury problems.
I remember watching that draft and in the first round going, it's stay away from Myles Jack and the knee. And then the second round, they're like, that was an amazing pick.
Yeah.
Well, what difference is it
exactly.
if you think he's going to be, I don't know. He was there and he took him. I don't know how much of a risk it is. I thought it was a great pick because, again, a couple months leading up to the draft that year, they were talking about, will the Jags take Myles Jack 5th overall?
Yeah.
He was going to be a top 10 pick.
But he didn't play that whole next season.
Right. So, I mean, it was, I don't know.
I mean, take a whole season off, you're not likely to get drafted very high. He didn't take it off. He got injured, but...
But again, this is kind of where his free agency took off as well, though, right? I mean, this is...
Well, let's look at that. Good question. January. Great start to January. You signed Gus Bradley to a 1-year extension.
That is the one right there. What in the world? What in the world?
Yep.
I don't get it. That is the biggest question mark and the biggest asterisk.
When that happened, it was like, what are you doing?
Are you serious?
I agree. I thought that was like ridiculous. But again, way above my pay grade, what other coaches were available at that point?
Anybody.
Marrone. Marrone was on the
available
team
then?
Yeah, he was on the team then. Wasn't he? Didn't he come in as he came in as offensive line.
Yeah.
And then they transferred him up to assistant head coach.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but he had just dipped on the Bills at that point. I mean, are you really going to
that's true.
trust that guy with the whole team? I mean, I don't know.
I think my biggest issue with that, and this does correlate with Caldwell too, is I know people are indifferent on this, but like how they handled that. I thought they could have got rid of Gus Bradley sooner and let Marrone step up into that role and hopefully either kind of salvage the season a little bit for morale purposes or just got to see how he would actually do correlating with the back office and everything ahead of time. I mean, obviously he's panned out great for us, but almost as a little bit of a trial run before we came into the next season, just go, all right, you're the head coach. I didn't really care for the handling of that personally all that much.
I would agree. I think that's definitely a knock against Caldwell. He left Gus in that year way too long. Mm-hmm. He should have been fired halfway through the year. Top.
Yeah, not the last 4 games.
Yeah, agreed.
There was some game that season that we just lost by like 40. And everyone was like, there's no way Gus has a job after this.
Yeah, and he
just
still
kept
did.
going.
It was like 2 or 3 more games after that. You're like, really?
Yeah,
This
I
guy
agree.
got like video of Caldwell like doing something he shouldn't be doing.
That Gus bus.
Yeah, it's the Gus bus. All right, so then he fired Bob Babbitt, defense coordinator, and hired Todd Wash.
Good move.
Great move.
Yeah.
Was that? I mean, obviously
That was
he
Gus's
did
guy.
that, but that's Gus's guy.
Yeah, that was Gus's guy. He was Gus's guy in Seattle.
Not too much of his guy because Wash didn't leave
Well,
with
hey,
him.
hey, it's a business, you know. I gotta eat, you know.
Yeah.
Then he signed Malik Jackson, Chris Ivory, and Tayshaun Gibson. Those were the good signings that year.
Yeah.
Yeah. Can't knock those.
But also was signed that year was Kelvin Beachum, who took $10 million total by the time he was cut, and Prince Amukamara, who took $6 million by the time he was cut.
I didn't think
I really
Prince was a bad signing.
I really didn't think Beachum was either. I mean, he had a pretty good year.
Prince had a serviceable year for what we needed him for.
They signed Beachum to be a stopgap player. He was not coming in to be the future left tackle.
Yeah.
It was fill the need for this year, and then we're going to see what we can do after that.
And then Prince was signed on a 1-year deal for that reason. Let's see if you're going to show out or not. I mean, and
he was injured the year before.
Yeah, and he didn't do as good as they hoped he could. They got some other people in there, and he's gone. So I mean, that wasn't terrible.
Both players are still in the league, so when, in terms of that,
I think I just kind of knew. I knew both those players weren't good, and so when they gave him Mukamura, ended up giving him $6 million. I'm sure his contract was a little more. I just knew I was wasting money.
I mean, I think at that point though, he was still kind of like sticking bubble gum and like the water shooting out of the wall. You know, I mean, he had to fill spots.
Kinda
and,
like-
Yeah.
and he was grabbing the best players he could. He wasn't
Yeah.
signing them to ridiculous contracts, short-term deals, and it kind of got us to where we're at now. So, yeah, not like fantastic, but I really can't knock him for that either.
Yeah, I agree 100%. I mean, with free agency, you kind of have to take what's available.
And we had the money
you
to
also
fill.
you have to overspend on them
Yeah.
because the next terrible team will.
Yeah, if you don't, they're going to.
Right. So you got to work with what you have. And that kind of goes back to what I was saying earlier. The Calais Campbell, AJ Boye's a free agency just aren't around all that often. So when you have a need and Prince and Makamura is the best corner available, you got to sign him.
Now, are we moving on to the Calais and?
Not
Oh
yet.
no!
Slow your roll.
Okay,
God,
sorry.
we haven't even May yet. Okay,
All right.
In May
going.
he
So
released.
you got somewhere to be, man? That's what's going on.
I just like Calais a lot. We'll talk about them.
There's only two more things. May 1st, he released Brian Body Calhoun, who went on to be a Pro Bowl defensive back for the Browns. So missed there.
Was that like a practice squad guy or like?
He was like a fringe.
Because I don't even recognize that.
Yeah,
name.
no, he didn't play a lot for us, but he went on to be a Pro Bowler, and he was pretty good. But he did get burnt by D.D. Westbrook in his first NFL catch, I believe.
There we go.
So Caldwell had the last laugh on that one.
Just cussing him from the skybox.
D.D., get him.
In October, he fired Greg Olson and promoted Nathaniel Hackett.
Solid.
Good
Solid.
move.
Did
That was-
everybody loved that decision because the offense was so bad.
I
mean,
think
the play calling was
I
so
think at
boring.
that point that he was kind of thinking about Marrone being the coach because that was Marrone's guy.
Hackett was?
Yeah.
Okay.
He was his OC in Buffalo. So he came with Marrone here and was a quarterback's coach under Olson. And then they booted Olson and promoted Hackett. So, and Marrone has been singing Hackett's praises since the day he got here. As like, this guy's good. And honestly, I love Hackett. He's one of my favorite coaches on the staff.
Did Hackett come in as the? Didn't he come
Came
in
as the-
halfway through the season or something like that?
I can't remember when he came in.
It felt like it was like later on in the season too, because we saw like a little upswing from Bortles when he came in too.
Yeah, you're right. I think he did.
So
Yeah. In December, well, what happened was he was promoted halfway through the season. I think that's what it was.
is that what it was?
Yeah.
Okay.
So then in October, Hackett took over, and then
And then
Bortles-
that upswing
yeah.
came in.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right, and then the final thing in December, he fired Gus Bradley and promoted Marrone,
No.
which, like I said earlier, I think was more Coughlin.
And then they fully hired Marrone in the offseason. He was
Right.
interim until
yes.
through the end of
Yeah,
the
yeah,
year.
yeah.
Which was only 2 games, I think, right?
Yeah, only 2 games, and that's what was the crazy part to me.
I know.
Which again, though, I mean, when he made him the head coach,
was a
most people
change.
were not happy.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
when they hired him as the coach, everybody was like,
Marrone?
"What?"
Well, no one really knew much about him other than he went to Buffalo. He went what 9-7.
let me say something because Jason was saying a lot. Like when they did this, I knew blah blah blah. I'm gonna say when they did this, I was happy. I was rooting for Marrone.
Yeah.
As to be the next coach because he was the only coach. If you go back in time, who had any coaching experience, head coaching experience,
And actually had won.
and had won. And if you can win in Buffalo, you can win anywhere. And
Yeah.
that was such a toxic environment. Yes, he left. It was a strange circumstance, but I don't really think that spoke to his character or integrity anyway. I was so glad they hired him, and he has obviously exceeded everyone's expectations, not just in how he coaches, but his personality, his style. I mean, he's
I
awesome.
think everybody tried to play up the leaving Buffalo thing as a negative to him, but I think that showed how smart the dude was.
Exactly.
I mean, he left a winning team, a head coaching position, making a lot of money to come take a
volunteer job.
volunteer job.
And he turned that season around for Buffalo too. I had a buddy that he's from Buffalo, and when he heard that he was coming down here, he was like, "That guy's gonna probably be your head coach in a couple of years." And sure enough, he turned out to be. I thought he was crazy, but I mean, he said that he turned around the team when he was there, but then all the background stuff, and then he dips out. I mean, he had a winning record when he was up there when he left.
That's not easy to do in Buffalo. I mean, think about how they've been since he's left.
I still think that's another huge mark in the Caldwell being an awesome GM.
Okay, but
spot.
This is where we have to ask the question: was it a Caldwell hire? Or was it a Coughlin hire?
Well,
because Coughlin was
who
there.
brought him in originally?
Caldwell brought him in because Coughlin wasn't here when he came in as the offensive line coach.
He was on staff, but who decided to make him the head coach?
Well, I'm saying, I mean, if what Jason's alluding to is true, that Hackett getting promoted was part of the plan, he was thinking that beforehand. If he's that far ahead of the game as far as chess goes, that's pretty impressive.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think Coughlin was probably had control of this franchise probably a little earlier than people think. Or that's how the business goes sometimes.
Caldwell had the right people in here. He just wasn't putting them in the correct positions, and that allowed Coughlin to come in and just be like, all right, let's shuffle this around.
Right. Yeah,
you got the right people, but let's
Jacksonville. I'll fill this role for y'all, but this is what I want to happen.
Sure.
Yeah, we'll shuffle these people around and get this working the way it should be.
And if you look at the personality types and the, just the grit, like they like to say, and the old school football mentality, I mean, Marrone and Coughlin are like peas in a pod, man. I mean, he definitely had something to do with that.
Yeah. Those were his years that probably weren't the greatest for Caldwell. So, what do y'all think about? We'll take a break here. We'll get to some Twitter responses on what they think about Bradley, and then we'll talk about Joey's topic of Calais Campbell.
You're just
I'm just trying to delay it because I know he's getting antsy over there.
Hey, the only reason I'm okay with that is because I got to go to the bathroom.
All right, we'll be right back. All right, guys, welcome back to episode 20 of another Jags podcast. I'm going to use this opportunity that I get to talk to tell you to follow our Twitter because I run the Twitter and it's awesome. It's at Another Jags Pod. We do great videos, things like that. Also, we're on Facebook and Instagram at Another Jags Podcast. We're breaking down the front office today of the Jacksonville Jaguars, specifically since 2013 when Caldwell was hired. We asked you guys on Twitter what you thought, and thank you guys for all your responses. We wish we could get to all of them on the air, so we're going to start with Patrick Jackson, and his handle is at Radius Johansson.
Yeah.
And he says his thoughts on the GM is, I like the way he's building to a clear plan. The pieces have come together well because the plan is clear and everyone is bought into it. He goes on to talk about Gus Bradley couldn't deliver the improvements, and he says, I like the way he handles the team. They are all pulling in the same direction, so they are more than the sum of their parts. No prima donnas, no one like OBJ, he says. He says he handled Fournette's suspension well, and he has strong leadership and sends a great message. So that's pretty strong endorsement of Dave Caldwell from Patrick.
Only thing I have to say, I don't mind prima donnas. I kind of like them sometimes.
Sometimes they're fun.
Yeah, as long as they have the talent level, I don't care. T.O., I would have loved T.O. I don't care.
I heard Baselli talking about T.O. on the radio this week, and he said, I would love to have him for a game, but I would not have been able to handle him for an entire season because it was all about him. And I think T.O.'s beyond a prima donna. He's more than that.
That's true. But a top, possibly
is
top
Jalen
three.
In that category?
He's a prima donna, no doubt about it.
Yeah.
But he's a good one.
He's good. And
he gets along with his teammates.
He's our prima donna.
That's right.
So we don't consider him.
I've said on this show he's my favorite Jag of all time.
Oh,
so.
yeah.
But I think a team might need one as long as you're not too much. But I haven't thought about that. It's a good point that he made about just the characters in the locker room, the guys he's brought in. It is a very, very, very healthy locker room.
Yeah.
It is a healthy locker room, but again, I think that goes back to Coughlin setting the standard of what he expects in the organization and Caldwell bringing in players that are good that fit that mold. I don't think that mold was there before, so I think it's a combo thing.
And even Marrone, I mean, how he handled Leonard Fournette at the beginning of the season, you know? I mean, he missed a couple minor things, and he's like, you know what? We're not going to deal with this. We're just going to go ahead and suspend you a game, set a precedent across everyone that even if it's a team picture, you better be here kind of deal. I mean, they're making sure those people aren't just not showing up to things.
Yeah, I mean, that kind of attitude comes from the top down, and players buy in when you've got a Hall of Fame guy in your office, like Coughlin. I mean, I think that helps.
All right, so then we're moving on to our next one. This is BRP, and he's at Lompo. So he says, usually if a GM misses on a quarterback, they're gone. But Dave has been able to survive based on the success of all of his other moves. That says something.
So he's presuming that Bortles is a miss. So he's not as optimistic as we are.
He may fall into the category of that I was saying, that he's never going to be a top 3 quarterback or a top 5 quarterback. And if you're drafted in the top 3 of a draft, you're expected to become a top 5 quarterback, I would think.
Yeah. Or at least maybe a better way to put it is a franchise quarterback.
Right.
In every sense of the word.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a tough question because I think the book's still open on Bortles and Caldwell. I mean, I think we're trying to sum it up like it's kind of the last chapter, but they kind of are tied together, right? I mean,
yeah, that's true.
I would say with Bortles, if he doesn't have the leap, then he is who he is.
Yeah.
And, you know,
and after that, and if he is who he is, what we've seen so far, then it is a miss.
Yeah,
it is.
I agree with that.
But I don't think that's going to be the case.
No, everything's put in place for him to make that leap this year. If he doesn't, then he's done the best he could. Yeah. He's that guy.
Yeah, I mean, we've talked about Bortles multiple times he hasn't been under the same coordinator. I mean, let alone a solid head coach for multiple seasons. So, I mean, this year could be a turnaround year for him as well because of that. Getting a second year with the same offensive coordinator, that's going to be a big move for him.
Our next one is from Phil Shad at Phil Shad. And he says, sure, arguably Caldwell's best draft was 2014 when he took Bortles, Allen Robinson, Marquise Lee, Telvin Smith, and Linder, which in my opinion was his best haul. It's easy to point to the 2016 draft, but anyone would have drafted Ramsey and Miles Jack. No brainer. Although Ngakoue was a good play, though. My problem with Caldwell was that he was responsible for hiring Gus Bradley, then giving him a contract extension. That move set the franchise back years and is unforgivable. He should have been fired when Gus was.
I think those are all good points. That was a bad decision. Most people would have been fired at that point for dragging that like he did, especially with some of those other calls. But again, keeping him, I mean, you can't knock the results of where we're at right now. And he had to have had a huge, part in that. So I don't think we should have fired him now, just with hindsight of what we're doing at the moment.
I would love to know the real reason why they extended Gus Bradley's contract. There has to be more to the story than just we believed in him. There has to be. Because we were sputtering, and then they signed him to an extension. It just makes no sense to me at all, or anyone that was following the franchise at that time. I mean, it's a huge head-scratcher move. And to me, there just has to be more to the story. Doesn't there? I mean, really?
It's a good point, because even like the 10-10XL homers at that point were like, Gus needs to be gone. And
yeah.
Why is he still here? What's going on? So, I mean, what? I mean, what could possibly have been the reason to keep him that long?
I remember a few people talking about one of the reasons it was a rumor of one of the reasons they were doing this was that since we had so many changes for such a long period of time, that they were trying to give a head coach 3 to 4 years to develop. That way, if they don't work out, it doesn't look like we're just like chopping people's heads off left and right. We're not just cycling through head coaches every other year to make it more enticing for maybe a more well-known head coach to come in, knowing that he's going to have a little time to develop his team back. Now, whether that's true or not, I don't know, but I don't necessarily agree with it, but that could possibly have been the reason.
Yeah.
Let him have 4 years, that way
that would have
another
been
guy
his
comes
second firing in 4 years.
Yeah,
Right.
I mean...
And I get that. I totally understand what you're saying, but the most cold-blooded franchise in the NFL is the New England Patriots. And they win. No one questions. Oh man, they like. And it's like it's almost become their reputation. It's what they do, but also what they do is go to the Super Bowl every year. It's tough to validate it that way, but at the same time, I also understand it's not a good look when you're constantly firing people all the time.
I mean, I guess with that being said, if you look back on it and you did know Marrone was going to be the next coach, and that was your plan, what does it really matter if you fired Bradley in the second game or 8th game or 10th game? I mean...
Higher draft pick, Jalen Ramsey.
Yeah.
Are you suggesting we threw that year?
I mean, it just there would be
I think
no
the word's
benefit to
tank.
firing him earlier.
The term is tank.
The team wasn't ready. I mean, how much better would they have done? Maybe a game or two. So I mean, I guess with that, who cares?
I don't know. I mean, it's such a bizarre move for them to make, extending his contract. To me, there just has to be more to the story than anyone's ever probably going to know, unless someone writes a book, which I don't know how
Books work.
How many people are going to be interested in? Yeah, how's a
Audiobook?
Yeah.
Is that a podcast?
Where are the buttons?
All right, so the last one we're going to read, this comes from Trebe Talks at Trevon Pixley. And Trebe Talks has some good work on YouTube, some good Jaguars content. But he says, Caldwell doesn't get enough credit. This whole team is Dave Caldwell's team, whether that be through free agency or draft. When there has been needs, he's filled them. For example, I love what he did with the wideouts this year after losing Hearns and A-Rob. He got Lee back, signed Moncrief to a low-risk prove-it deal, and drafted one of the top wide receiver prospects in this year's draft, DJ Chark. He's a big reason why the team is where it is today.
So that's a super pro Caldwell.
Yeah. So we have quite a few endorsements for Caldwell.
I will say this, and he brings up a good point here. Joey, I know, is going to agree, I think, with this in that I like that he didn't sign Robinson. I like that move. Now, I'm not sure. I didn't like it at the time, but seeing how things have unfolded, I like that move, that they didn't pay him the money that he was wanting.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely agree because I said that should happen from the beginning. I don't think Caldwell just lost him. Caldwell pushed him out. That was intentional. So
You
it was
think
a
he
smart
pushed
move.
him out, or just that here's the line, we're not going to pay you more than this?
Well, that's his choice. I mean, he totally could have signed him if he wanted to. So, I mean, I think he wouldn't pay him what he wanted to, which wasn't a lot more than he ended up paying all the other receivers. So I think that was intentional.
Yeah.
I think that was a call he
And
made.
He brings up a good point. He got DJ Chark as a replacement.
Exactly.
Which I like that pick a lot.
So, I mean, I think that turned out to be a fantastic call on his part. So that's a great point.
Yeah, all he had to do with A-Rob is just franchise tag him. I mean, he would have had no say in the matter whatsoever, and he didn't.
And that's another thing that I like about Caldwell that we haven't talked about. He doesn't franchise tag guys.
Yeah.
It's you don't see that with the Jags. He doesn't get them in the position where they have to do that, and I think that's a smart thing. In terms of that, yeah, that does shed a little more of a positive light on Caldwell. Not just who he signs, but who he doesn't re-sign, except for Bradley, who he did. I'm convinced that I think maybe Bradley had pictures of Caldwell riding a shark butt naked, something like that he was hanging over his head.
That would have been awesome.
I mean, I would absolutely love just to see the behind the scenes stuff on all this. It would almost be like a reality show as far as like who makes what calls. Everything have to come across Coughlin's desk, and he put his stamp on it, or put his initials on it before Caldwell can do anything. I mean, I just love to know all that. That would be so cool.
It would be. Well, we never will.
No,
because Coughlin's in the front seat. So.
And he requires discipline, unlike Caldwell.
All right, well, do you want to we'll finish up with Caldwell's 2017 draft and free agent moves?
Sure. We use that term "finish up" loosely, by the way.
Very loosely. So
Joey's just biting at the bit here.
Finish up is when James falls asleep in his chair. So we'll let you know when that happens.
I had a big chocolate chip cookie before here, so I got some energy.
His
But
eyes
it's
are
fading.
His eyes are about half open right now.
okay, so with 2017, Leonard Fournette in the first round. That's pretty solid.
Yeah, I like it.
4th overall.
Yeah.
Some people say
Can't argue with that one.
Can't be mad at
Can't argue
you.
that one. Cam Robinson, 2nd round.
Like it.
Good pick.
He actually nailed that pick.
Yeah.
Well,
I mean, what
we'll see.
left tackle can start his rookie year and do as well as he did? I mean, he had some moments, but overall,
Dwayne Smoot, 3rd round.
I like it.
A lot of people like him.
yeah.
4th round, D.D. Westbrook.
I love Westbrook. I think that was a fantastic
Another
call.
steal, I think.
Very much so.
Finished it out with Blair Brown, Jalen Myrick, and Marquez Williams, who
Well, don't skip over Blair Brown too quick.
Blair Brown's
because
our starter
He
right
could be
now,
our
bro.
starting strong linebacker.
So, hey, he drafted somebody last year in a late round that's going to be our starter this year. So,
please
good
don't
pick,
do that.
right?
Don't do that to me.
Gosh, really, in all seriousness, that draft class 2017 could rival the 2014 in terms of just the load that it's bringing in. Smoot, I'm interested to see what he's going to be. He's behind some grizzled veterans right now who may not be on the team after this season. May or may not. We don't know. We don't want to get into that. But
Smoot would have been a starter 3 years ago. I mean, our just defensive line is just insane right now.
Right.
I mean, that's the only reason he's not currently.
you got Fournette, who's a monster. Robinson, who starting left tackle. I mean, if you got him and he ends up being good, that guy's that's a solid position that you've locked up for the next 10 years. That's huge.
Yeah.
And again, you want to talk about the Baselli stamp of approval. Baselli loves that guy.
Right.
Says his footwork's fantastic. I mean, he's just got the mechanics. Like, he's a hard worker.
Plays mean.
He's going to get nothing but better. He just needed to get stronger, I
Right,
think was the knock on him, and it sounds like he has. So that's a great pickup.
Didi, and I mean that's a man. That's
Didi
a,
was my favorite.
that's
I think
a
he's
good
going to
draft.
I think he's going to blow the doors off the league this year.
Jalen Myrick blocked a extra point against the 49ers.
That's probably the only good thing we did the
There
whole
you
game.
go.
wasn't it?
Yeah, okay. Thanks for that, Caldwell.
In 2017, they exercised the 5th-year option on Bortles.
All right.
Okay.
A lot of people said that was a dumb move.
Yeah.
That was a good money move, I thought.
Okay, but look at these. This is the free agent signing. Keelan Cole, undrafted free agent.
Major.
Does that save? I mean,
all
that's
time.
We talk about the draft.
Yeah. I mean, how do you
Keelan Cole is in
Yeah.
that draft.
How do you identify a guy from Southwest Louisiana, Kentucky State Technical College that comes in and plays like
Come
that?
on,
I
it was
mean,
Kentucky Wesleyan.
uh,
Or was Western
I
Kentucky?
wanted Tennessee Wesleyan, so
I
I,
don't
can
know
say
which
that.
one it was.
I think it was Kentucky Wesleyan, but
I think he's a Jacksonville Jaguar.
he is now.
It was D2 somewhere. All right, they cut Myers and signed Lambeau.
Huge.
Again, I mean, mid-season to make a call like
Mid-season,
that.
yeah.
That should have been done the year before. but-
Bring a cast off from another team, and I mean, what do
Yeah.
you miss? One kick?
Yeah.
One.
And the biggest acquisitions of 2017, AJ Bouye, $67.5 million.
Worth it.
Yep.
Oh, totally worth it. But that was a risky pick, man. The guy
Yeah, it
had
wasn't
one
the
good
biggest
season.
Okay, no, he's good.
He's,
the dude's
he's
good.
unbelievable.
Yeah.
Are
But
you
he had
kidding
one
me?
good. He had one good season though. You want to talk about Jimmy G?
I think there was Pro Football Focus came out with a
Oh.
it was not like a next level stat. It was just like how many his completion percentage against him when the quarterback was under pressure, 0.9.
no, dude.
0.9. Like
I think
unbelievable.
I think he rivals Jalen as far as that position goes.
yeah, he's probably the second best corner in the league, I would say.
But he had one good season. That's some.
No, he did.
big-
He had a good season with the Texans.
That's
too.
what he's saying. He's saying,
That's what I'm saying.
going into the signing, he had one good
That's some-
season.
That's
Yeah,
some.
but
That's some. That's
That
some
doesn't
big.
mean that he might not be good. If he's shown you he's good, he's shown you he's good. It doesn't matter when he was paid and when he got the money. If he's had good seasons, he's had good seasons.
So nobody flashes for one season. You throw him all that
He's-
money,
it's
and
not
then
one
they tank?
season though. He was good before we signed him. That's why we signed him.
No, I'm
That-
saying
that's
that.
what he's
That's my
saying.
whole
That's
and
what
point.
he's
then we
saying.
signed.
Is
you're
that
saying it
he
was
gave him
risky.
all that money based off a
Well, I
1
just-
year
and I think,
showing.
I don't think most people knew he was going to be good. He had a couple good years, and I mean, wasn't he rated the best corner in the league for
Yes.
2016?
Yes.
So that's not fluke. You don't fluke the best overall corner.
All right.
You fluke top 10. You don't fluke number 1 overall.
Well,
Even
either way.
if you get lucky, you still would fall to like the 10th or 15th.
Either way, he nailed it.
It was an absolute home run.
Home run
Yes,
pick.
home run.
But really, the biggest signing of that year was Calais Campbell
Yeah.
for $60 million.
Yeah, we talked about that on one episode. I mean, I didn't know. I mean, I knew he was good, but I didn't know he was going to be show out like he did.
Well, and that's the reality of that pick. I mean, even Caldwell didn't know he was getting that caliber of a player
No.
when he signed him. There was a couple other guys that they were looking at that they were hoping weren't going to re-up with their team. Melvin Ingram was one. I think Jason Pierre-Paul was another one. And as free agency drew closer and closer, those guys ended up not becoming available. And so it was kind of like, oh, well, Calais Campbell's still out there. I think he had 8 sacks the last year in Arizona.
Mm-hmm.
So
Same
to
as
go from
Dante Fowler. Interesting.
8 to 14.
Yeah.
Different player, different position.
Yeah.
So it was a great signing, but it's kind of, to me, it's almost like it feels a lot like the Jalen Ramsey pick. Not that it was a no-brainer like Ramsey, but it's just like, yeah, you signed him, but come on. You didn't know you were getting 14 sacks, possible defensive player of the year when you signed him. No one saw that coming.
No one did, but he also, Clay could have been the guy who comes in, uses as a retirement check, and mails it in at his age. I mean, he's kind of proven himself. He's a little bit older. He could have come in and done nothing, just taken the money and run. But
Well,
I think
and that goes back to one of the guys that we read on Twitter that talked about the character.
Exactly. And I think that ties into Caldwell's skill set. I think that's one of his strong points is he's plugging in guys that fit, that have good character, that are going to work together well. So that was a good call.
Yeah,
Either
I mean,
way.
not only, I mean, the 14 sacks was phenomenal, but even if, in my opinion, if he had another season of 8 sacks to 10 sacks, I mean, the fact that he came in and his character coming through and being a leader for that defensive line and the defense as a whole and being vocal and everything, that was leaps and bounds what we needed on our team at that point. We needed someone that could come in and be a true veteran presence and not just be a young team the whole time.
Well, he wasn't just a veteran presence, but he was a veteran presence who proved himself on the field. So anything that he said in the locker room had weight because of what he was doing on the field. He was the missing piece.
Yeah.
He was the missing piece of the puzzle for that defense. And when he came in, it changed. It was like you have Telvin, who's this vocal leader, the guy that's going to lead you into battle. But then Campbell comes in and it's almost like he's the same leader but completely opposite. Same impact, does it a totally different way.
Yeah.
And love it. One
Absolutely.
of my favorite
And he's
players
also,
on the team.
like Malik, he's a great community guy. And I don't think we give those guys enough credit for that. I mean, when they do off-the-field stuff that we don't like and they get in trouble, get arrested, that's everywhere. But we don't blow up the stuff they do when it's good enough, I don't think. And he does a lot.
How about this, too? We got training camp starts next week. We're looking like we're arrest-free at this point. No.
You jinxed it, didn't you?
I know. Maybe I did.
Thanks.
Maybe we'll edit that out of the show. But hey, I don't think so. I think again we have character guys that are all holding each other accountable. I don't see anything bad happening in the next week.
Yeah.
Plus, Coughlin's going door to door right now doing checks to make sure everybody's in bed.
Everyone's asleep.
Yeah.
He sent Caldwell to do it, but no one respects him.
Except Marcel.
Ooh.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
that's true. That is one. That's
He's not
one.
quite arrested yet.
Yeah, we're gonna let it unfold. Let the process
That's true.
unfold.
Okay, so we can't even give a fair point on how he's done in 2018 because literally nothing's happened. But what are your feelings about Norwell drafting Taven Bryan?
Also bringing in Marcel Darius.
Yeah,
mid-season.
bringing in Marcel Darius. Yeah, but what are your just general sentiments about what he did, what he's done this year?
I like it. He went out and followed up arguably the best free agent signing class in Campbell and Boye, and I'll throw in Church there because he had a great year too, by going out and getting the best guard in the NFL. So I like what he did there. I also will go ahead and say I like what he did in the draft as well. Taven Bryan, got him. Chark, I like Harrison. I like every pick, and obviously this is a big homer perspective, and I'll admit that fully, but I think it's going to be another good draft class. So I'm excited to see what they do.
Yeah, I wasn't upset with anything they did in the draft. I mean, I thought it was all good stuff. I think he set the tone for that, though, by not going after like a Keenum and overpaying for a quarterback. He let A-Rob go. Mercedes Lewis, even though everybody, I love him, but he did a lot of decisions before that allowed us to spend the money on the stuff that we needed. Norwell, that was out of the blue.
Yeah.
I mean, how can you not like that? I mean,
Yeah, they thought they were going
guys-
to go for the Giants. Who was it? The Giants guard.
yeah, I mean, it's always a risk in free agency, but when you go get the number one, arguably best player in that position, how can you really knock that decision?
No, you can't.
Yeah,
So-
I agree with all y'all, but it's hard to know. They could all be busts, and we don't know.
Yeah.
I hope not.
You never
but
know.
yeah.
You never know.
All
But
right,
it
so-
looks good.
Just to wrap it up before we get to our final thoughts on Dave Caldwell,
Justin Pugh, sorry.
the three players that we left out: Malik Jackson, who was signed to a 6-year, $86 million deal, pretty good pick.
Yeah,
Huh.
I
Very
would
good
say
pick.
better pick.
Very
Absolutely.
good pick.
Okay, you also had Julius Thomas, who we paid $24 million to.
Awful.
Terrible. And then
Although no one thought that really when it happened.
yeah,
I was super excited about
Yeah,
that.
he was a
I mean,
product of, again, Peyton Manning being
That's
in-
where you wonder,
in
like,
Denver.
did he take a physical when they signed him? Because the dude couldn't
Yeah, but
run.
he sat out for like a thumb for like 6
Yeah.
games. I mean, I think that was just a matter of getting money and
Yeah. He
being
was
done.
the guy that came
He
in
was.
for
That's
the paycheck.
exactly what he was.
Yep.
Because he went to the Dolphins and
Did nothing there
terrible.
either.
Yeah.
I think he did worse in Miami than he did here.
and finally Jared Odrick, who we gave $22.5 million to for 2 years.
I thought it was too much money. I didn't really necessarily mind Audric, though. I mean, I
Yeah.
thought
He
he
was,
served.
he was just a guy.
I think he served a role here at the time. There was no one else. I mean, we kind of had a. I mean, I thought it was too much money, but we had to get someone into that position.
He has a nude scene on Ballers.
Yeah, that was actually a great
That's,
episode too.
You would like that episode,
yeah.
Robert.
So is that a positive or a negative?
I'll let you be the judge.
Well put.
Oh no, that wasn't the house party episode. Never mind.
Never seen the show.
Neither have I.
I think it's on during Jeopardy, so you're not going to get my attention. Okay, so now we're going to bookend it this episode with the same question. I asked you guys at the beginning of the episode, yes or no, do you think Dave Caldwell is a good general manager? We have dissected what he's done, I think, pretty thoroughly. So I'm going to ask you again, after talking all this stuff through, getting outside perspectives from some guys on Twitter, hearing from each other, do you still stand with what you said at the beginning of the episode? I think all three of you, Joey, Robert, and Jason, said that yes, you think Dave Caldwell's a good GM. So I'm going to ask you again, Joey, yes or no?
I do. And again, I think the book's still open on him, but the last chapter in that book was fantastic last year. You can't knock where we're at right now, and he's a large part of that. So I'm going to say yes again.
Okay, yes for Joey.
I want to change up. I'm going to say as a GM, no. I'm going to say as like a scouter, I would say yes. But we saw his first few seasons here. It's kind of a mess between draft picks and also with coaching. And I just, as a general manager, I don't think he managed the team well. But when we did get Coughlin in, I felt like all the pieces kind of started playing through. So as a general manager, I'm going to say no at this point.
I'm going to say that he's going to be very good. He's young. He's made some mistakes. He's worked under some good people. There's some good people around him. I would say as a first-round drafter, I would give him like a C+. And then as a late-round drafter, I'd give him like an A+. So,
What about free agency?
And in free agency, I would give him like a B to a B+. So I think he's kind of hovers in that B grade for me, which is good because the life of a GM isn't what it used to be. It used to be you were set in for life, and now it's like they're head coaches. They get cycled out every 3 or 4 years. So, has he made some mistakes? Yes. But there's picks where they're no-brainers, and then they go one way or the other. There are no-brainer picks that ended up being good. I'm like, it's a no-brainer. Then there was no-brainer free agents that ended up being bad, and it's like, that was a bad pick. But they were also no-brainers at the time. So I would say just as an average, give him a B. And I think as he gets older and ages, he will be very, very good.
Yeah, I'm going to say yes. I think he's a good GM because I think he's made more right decisions than wrong decisions. And even though we say in that the Jalen Ramsey pick was a no-brainer, it's not his fault, that it's a no-brainer.
Right,
You can't knock him for that. I think overall, a lot of it comes down to what Bortles does this year because those two guys are attached at the hip. If Bortles succeeds, then that makes Caldwell that much better of a GM. If Bortles does not succeed, it makes him that much less. And I think Bortles is going to succeed. That's my belief and that's my hope. And so with that, I think Caldwell, yes. The only thing that I would really question, and look, no GM bats 1,000, but the one that I would question is why he extended Gus Bradley's contract. And like we've said before, I think there's more to that story, and we'll never know what it is.
Maybe Jason should hit him up on Twitter and just ask him, like, flat out.
It's a great idea.
You want me to call him?
Sure.
I'll just call him and ask him.
That'll work.
You got to sell?
So,
yeah.
We'll have an answer for you guys next week.
All right. Is that it?
I think that's it, man.
I think that is.
I think that might be our longest.
And I'm done.
Yeah. It's late. We're going to wrap it up. We want to thank those that responded and let us know their thoughts on Dave Caldwell. We want to hear from more of you, so you can reach out to us on Twitter at Another Jags Pod, Facebook and Instagram at Another Jags Podcast. You can find us on YouTube. You can add some comments there on our episodes, and we'll check those out as well. If you're not savvy to downloading podcasts, if you are, you can find us on iTunes, SoundCloud, and all that fun stuff. Tell your friends. Look, training camp is next week, and that's what we're going to start talking about is the season, the upcoming season.
It's going to be nice.
Because it is upon us. Yes, it will be very nice. Thank you all for listening. We appreciate it. We'll see y'all next week when we talk training camp. As always, go Jags.